If I marry my mistress, I'll be the next CEO. Haha.
Despite having me as a wife, he was brazenly cheating. I discovered him cheating on me on a weekday during the day, pretending to go to work, but actually going on dates with his mistress. When I confronted him with photos of his affair, instead of showing remorse, he tried to justify himself.
The future is pretty much promised, huh? It's like a guaranteed win. Haha.
He ridiculed me by comparing me to the daughter of the CEO, his mistress. The way my husband was acting like he was teasing society was just too funny, and I couldn't hold back my laughter. He was so pleased with himself that he didn't even notice I was laughing. "Whose daughter did you say she is?" As he nonchalantly mentioned the company name, I muttered, "Oh, that one," but he didn't catch it.
You and I will divorce. I want to register our marriage quickly. Haha.
Yes, of course. Let's get a divorce. There was no reason for me to refuse, so I immediately agreed. Thus, we divorced without a single apology from him. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know about the connection between his mistress's father and my father. He, who was so sure of his win, has no idea what's coming for him. My name is Claire Hill, a 28-year-old housewife. I was living with my husband, Scott, who is 2 years younger than me.
Claire, this boy can be a bit clingy, but please take good care of him.
When my husband and his parents came to our house for the marriage introduction, I found his character trait to be endearing. While my in-laws were overjoyed about our marriage, I remember my father being worried.
Scott, can you truly make my daughter happy? No matter what hardships come, can you face them together?
I panicked when my father asked him so directly. I thought Scott would be confused by the pressure. Due to my father's status, I was frequently the topic of gossip. Because of that, my father has become very protective of me. However, Scott confidently assured him,
Yes, I will definitely make Claire happy. We would greatly appreciate your blessing on our marriage.
With those words, my father reluctantly gave his consent. When I also nodded, showing that it was all right, my father finally smiled. Then my father, who runs a restaurant, treated us to a lavish meal of steak. I thought I could live happily and have fun with this person. However, the frustration gradually built up. Initially, we promised to both work and share household chores, but Scott started making excuses and stopped doing his share.
Sorry, I'm a bit tired from work today. Can you take care of the housework?
It was hard to say no when he asked with a puppy dog face. Oh, well, can't be helped. At first, I could answer with a smile, but as the same situation repeated itself over and over, it became harder to do so. I quietly took over the household tasks, making sure not to let out a big sigh in front of him. Even though I was working and there were times I came home late, I still did the house chores. Unable to voice my frustrations, my heart gradually grew wary.
I have a request. Could you quit your job and become a full-time housewife? That would reduce your burden, right?
The whole point was that if Scott had properly shared the household chores, the burden wouldn't have fallen on me alone. However, without arguing, I decided to quit my job as he wished. I was a bookstore clerk, a job born out of my love for books. It was tough at times, but being surrounded by books and blessed with kind colleagues made every day enjoyable. Leaving my job was sad, but my in-laws were the ones who showed concern for me.
Claire, we're sorry about Scott, making you quit a job you love like this. We've told that boy time and again to cherish you.
Scott, without showing a trace of guilt, simply smiled and thanked me. In contrast, my in-laws, looking as pained as if it were their own matter, apologized and comforted me. It's okay, he was raised by such kind people. He will surely change. I optimistically thought that he would become more responsible little by little, instead of pushing the burden onto me. I decided to trust him. One weekday, I went out to buy a wedding anniversary gift for my in-laws. Wondering whether flowers would be nice or perhaps something like a tumbler that they could use every day, I heard whispering voices as I walked.
Wow, look at that couple. They really can do that in the middle of the street?
Glancing in that direction, I saw a man and a woman kissing. How bold to do that in broad daylight. I thought to myself as I was just about to go, but then I took a second look and saw that I knew one of them. I couldn't believe my eyes. The man was my husband, Scott. I didn't recognize the woman with him. Why was he here? Hadn't he left for work in the morning, telling me he would be back? No matter how many times I blinked, there was no mistake. It was Scott. The suit color, the bag, all exactly the same. The smile he gave the woman was unmistakably his. I instinctively took a photo of them with my smartphone. I wasn't feeling up for shopping anymore. My heart was racing like crazy, so I decided to head home. Back at home, I couldn't bring myself to do anything. Not laundry, not washing dishes, not even preparing dinner. What should I do? I need to finish these tasks before Scott returns, I thought, standing up from the chair, but my body felt so heavy that I sat back down. As I repeated this several times, night fell, and Scott came home.
I'm home. What happened?
As usual, Scott entered the living room with a carefree smile. Noticing that neither cleaning nor laundry was done, he looked concerned. I opened the photo album of my smartphone and showed him the photo of him with the woman. Hey, what's this about? Who is she? Honestly, deep down, I wanted him to deny it. I wanted him to say that it wasn't him and that I was mistaken and that he was really at the office, working. Hoping to hear such words, I closed my eyes tight. However, what I heard was a voice calmly admitting to the affair.
Oh, you saw that, huh? Yeah, I'm having an affair with the daughter of our client. Haha.
It was a face of Scott I had never seen before, one that looked down on people. The cold expression, so different from his usually cheerful smile, gave me goosebumps. He gave off the impression of being unapologetically confident, freely sharing information without being asked. That his mistress's name was Kathy Anderson, that she was pregnant, so he was planning to leave me and marry her, and that he would work at his mistress's workplace. While he rambled on proudly, my heart grew cold. Thinking I had ever found this man adorable now seemed foolish.
Once I marry Kathy, I'll be the next CEO. The future is pretty much guaranteed, huh? It's like a guaranteed win. Haha.
The way my husband was acting like he was teasing society was just too funny, and I couldn't hold back my laughter. He was so pleased with himself that he didn't even notice I was laughing. Whose daughter did you say she is?
I told you it's Anderson Corporation. I'm dating Kathy, Mr. Anderson's daughter. Haha.
I then muttered, "Oh, that one." And Scott didn't seem to hear what I said.
You and I will divorce. I want to hurry up and register my marriage with Kathy. Haha.
Yes, of course, let's get a divorce. There was no reason for me to refuse, so I immediately agreed. It was sad to become strangers with my kind in-laws, but I had to report the divorce to them. When I talked to them, both of my in-laws apologized on behalf of their son.
I'm really sorry. We'll cut ties with our son.
I wished they wouldn't apologize so deeply, as it wasn't their fault. Even though I told them so, they kept apologizing to the point I got worried for them. Watching them, I vaguely remembered hoping Scott would change and felt a sense of emptiness. A week later, I called Scott and his mistress, Kathy, to a meeting, thinking it inappropriate to discuss such matters in a cafe or anywhere public. I reluctantly invited them to my house. Both arrived with displeased faces, rudely taking off their shoes and slumping into the living room sofa without even saying hello. I sat quietly opposite them. I will be claiming compensation for the affair. Thanks to getting a lawyer experienced in infidelity cases, the claim amount was substantial. Yet when I informed them, Scott and Kathy didn't seem upset but rather had smug smiles on their faces.
Fine by me. I'll have my father pay. It's no big deal for us.
The way she spoke exposed her high-handed nature. Kathy, sneering and looking down on me, had eyes that resembled Scott's when I showed him the photos of the affair. I realized that the saying, "birds of a feather flock together," is actually true, and I felt kind of out of place. Despite their laughter, I was paid the compensation in full.
You're like a magnet for money.
Begging for petty cash? What a poor thing.
I simply stared at them, thinking, you'll regret this later. 6 months later, I visited the company where Scott and Kathy worked for a certain purpose. Not for me, but for my father, who accompanied me. Scott and Kathy showed up right as we arrived at the reception. Seeing my face, they were visibly shocked. They seemed to want to ask if I still had some business with them, then quickly sneered.
What now? You're not here to beg for money because you're poor, are you?
Or what? You're here to beg me to take you back? Haha. Either way, coming all the way to the company shows some serious obsession. Haha.
It was neither. Ignoring their baseless comments, I waited for Mr. Anderson. I ignored them, and they got all worked up and made a bigger deal out of it.
What's all this commotion? Wait, you are...
A dignified man with a beard appeared, roughly the same age as my father, and the surrounding employees paid their respects to him immediately. He must be Kathy's father, Mr. Anderson. Upon seeing my father, Mr. Anderson's demeanor changed instantly. Noticing his father's reaction, Kathy asked,
What's wrong? Do you know this man?
Mr. Anderson then glared at them.
Don't you know? This man is one of our major shareholders. Don't be disrespectful.
Yes, in fact, the restaurant my father runs is more of a hobby. His main occupation is an investor, owning stocks in various companies. Scott and Kathy were looking at my father and me back and forth with disbelief.
Why didn't you tell me?
In the past, because my father was a major shareholder, I had suffered a lot.
People say your dad's rich, right? Then this should be easy for you.
Was a common thing people would say to me, along with other prejudiced views. That's why I never told anyone about who my father was.
Mr. Anderson, I intend to demand your resignation at the next shareholders' meeting.
My father stepped forward and stared straight at Mr. Anderson as he spoke. His lips trembled as he listened. Then, Scott spoke up instead.
Are you doing this out of spite because your daughter and I got divorced? That's a serious problem. Don't mix personal feelings into this.
It's crazy how Scott could say such hurtful stuff to his ex-father-in-law. My father glanced at Scott, then gave me a look. I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to Mr. Anderson. He then opened the envelope with a puzzled look, but widened his eyes when he saw its contents. Kathy leaned forward, curious about what was inside. Impatient with Mr. Anderson's hesitance to pull out the contents, Kathy snatched the envelope and pulled out the contents with Scott.
What is this?
The photos inside showed Scott and Kathy entering a hotel in broad daylight. The timestamp clearly indicated it was during work hours. In addition to the photos, there were documents proving that Mr. Anderson used company expenses to support the two. He had refrained from pulling out the contents in front of other employees in the lobby.
Are you now aware that this goes beyond being a personal complaint?
Mr. Anderson deflated and quietly left. His once impressive beard seemed to have lost its strength. Following him, Kathy and Scott also hurried away, leaving the envelope behind. At the shareholders' meeting, just as my father had said, Mr. Anderson resigned. Kathy was fired, and Scott was demoted. 5 years later, my mother-in-law passed away, and I was attending her funeral. The cloudy skies seemed to reflect the sorrow in my heart. The women, who seemed to be friends of my mother-in-law, were quietly crying.
Claire, thank you for coming today.
No, your wife was always very kind to me. While I was talking to my father-in-law, someone spoke my name.
Hey, Claire, that's you, right?
I turned to the voice and saw Scott in wrinkled morning clothes. He appeared much older than he should. I was surprised to see him there. I hadn't heard he would be attending. My father-in-law looked as if wondering why he was there too.
Why didn't you call me? I'm your son, after all. Mom would be sad not seeing me.
He had found out the date and location of the funeral on his own, as he wasn't invited due to being disowned. His loud voice was embarrassing. As Scott approached, my father-in-law stepped back with each word.
Well, anyway, I can get part of Mom's inheritance, right?
What? How could he say such a thing in front of grieving people? The other attendees stared at Scott in disbelief, isolating him further.
You will receive nothing. All of my wife's inheritance will be donated. That was her wish.
His voice trembled, barely containing his anger.
What? Then how am I supposed to live?
Why was he saying that? He has no choice but to work and earn money himself. I wish he wouldn't make a scene anymore. Isn't he aware that people are giving him icy stares? Scott turned his gaze from my father-in-law to me and started approaching me aggressively. I let out a small scream in my throat and quickly shut my mouth. Then, like my father-in-law, I stepped back.
Then give me back the compensation. Your dad's rich, so it shouldn't be a big deal for you, right?
Hearing his voice brought back unpleasant memories and the words that were said to me before. My face heated up, but I'm not the same little kid I was back then. I took several deep breaths to regain my composure. Why are you so desperate for money? Didn't you say the compensation was just pocket change for you back then? Scott began to explain his current situation. It turns out he had quit his job. The former CEO and Kathy, who's a significant spender, was also in trouble. Their household finances were a disaster. He said he wanted to divorce, but he couldn't because the compensation had been covered on his behalf.
That's why I want to give back the compensation to them and get a divorce from Kathy. I need the money for that.
But I have no obligation to return it. He should work, save money, and somehow manage the household expenses by living frugally with the three of them. I pointed this out, but he shook his head and suddenly grabbed my arm forcefully. What are you doing? Even though I knew I couldn't yell in front of others, I couldn't help but let out a little scream.
Please, I want you to remarry me.
He seems to think that by remarrying me, he could get the compensation back and escape from Kathy and her family. I was at a loss for words. I tried to pull my hand away, but his grip didn't weaken at all. There's no way I would remarry Scott. As soon as he owned up to cheating without feeling bad about it, I lost all my feelings for him. Who was it that arrogantly accepted the divorce, claiming victory? And now he's turning the tables, demanding to remarry, mocking everyone.
You still love me, don't you?
I wanted to slap the delusional man in front of me. However, I'm a rational person. If I did that, I'd be no different from Scott and those who act on impulse without thinking. Any feelings I had for you are long gone. Please, let go of me. Just as I spoke, someone called my name, overlapping with my words. Looking in that direction, a man approached with a little girl in tow.
Mommy!
The girl called out in a childish voice and ran to me.
Who's this?
The girl was my daughter. My daughter and I look very much alike. Even without asking, it should be clear that we're mother and daughter, but Scott seemed too shocked to accept it. I've remarried to someone your mother and father introduced me to. Noticing the matching rings on my and my husband's fingers, Scott's strength faded, and he knelt to the ground.
I don't know if this would be an apology to you, but I'd like to introduce you to someone wonderful. He's very serious, kind, and sincere. Would you meet him?
And that's how I met my husband. My mother-in-law had taken good care of me, so my husband and I attended the funeral.
Mommy? What's wrong with him?
Pointing at Scott, who seemed oblivious to his surroundings. Startled by her voice, Scott stood up and staggered away as if deflated.
Claire, I'm truly sorry. I had no idea he would come here.
He apologized to me. It felt like a scene I had seen many times before. Not Scott, but his parents apologizing for his actions. But he should take responsibility for his own actions. I hope Scott no longer involves my father-in-law. After that incident, my father sold all his stocks. He had acquired a considerable fortune. So when Scott mentioned being rich, I was shocked he might have sensed something. But now that he knows I have a new husband, he likely won't bother me again. Scott will spend his life unable to escape from the Anderson family. Thanks to my father's assets, we live a comfortable life. My daughter is growing up healthy, gradually able to do more and more. We watch her grow warmly, together with my father. My father loves his granddaughter. He smiles even wider when she calls him Grandpa. He has become a dependable and gentle grandfather for our daughter. I want to do everything I can to repay my father for helping us. Now I'm helping out at my father's restaurant, something I've wanted to do for a while. Originally open only on weekends because my father ran it alone, we've started opening on weekdays too, thanks to the increased help. Office workers come by during lunchtime on weekdays and families from the neighborhood visit on weekends. Seeing everyone smile and say it's delicious makes me feel warm. We want to continue living happily as a family.
I'm Kimberly, and I currently live with my husband, Patrick. Patrick always comes home late, which made me suspect he was having an affair. However, he insists that he isn't doing anything of the sort. I wanted to believe him, but his behavior was suspicious, which made me doubtful. It's strange that he would take his smartphone outside whenever he received a call. If he had nothing to hide, he should just talk on the phone inside the house. I thought it must be another woman. Despite this, Patrick kept insisting he wasn't cheating. But one day, I found decisive evidence. There was lipstick on Patrick's shirt. I have sensitive skin on my lips and never wear lipstick, only occasionally a tinted lip balm. So, it was odd to find bright red lipstick on it. It must have been from another woman, perhaps from doing something indecent or when she leaned on him. I was furious and confronted Patrick. Then, surprisingly, after all his denials, he easily admitted to it. Yes, that's right. I've been cheating. What? Are you being defiant now? Because I found someone better than a plain Jane like you. Guess what? The other person is your sister, Lauren. What? Really, you don't look anything like Lauren. It's disappointing. That's why it's a turn-off. Lauren is so beautiful, you know. I was more shocked that he cheated with my sister than being insulted about my looks. Why on earth my sister? Indeed, my sister is very beautiful and sophisticated. But she has the worst personality. She's always been the type to steal her friends' boyfriends and gloat about it. That's why I've always disliked her. I thought maybe Patrick was fooled by her, but they were both in the wrong. I wondered if they enjoyed mocking me. Is that so? Then let's get a divorce. That's what I want. If I can be with Lauren, I'll even pay compensation. Of course, you should pay compensation. Why are you so arrogant? Because I'm the one gracing you with my money. Patrick was arrogant and unapologetic, which made no sense since he was the one at fault. I couldn't understand why he was so haughty when he was the one who cheated. I did nothing wrong, so I shouldn't be spoken to from a place of superiority. But Patrick showed no remorse. He didn't seem guilty or apologize. I thought he should reflect a little. And so, we divorced, making Patrick my ex-husband. After the divorce, I returned to my parents' house. It was embarrassing to be back, but it wasn't my fault. My parents welcomed me without saying anything. I felt bad for relying on my kind parents, so I planned to move out eventually. But it was September, and it was hard to find a good apartment. Apartments were pretty filled up. It's probably because new employees and university students are signing leases. Considering my circumstances, staying at my parents' house seemed better for now. So, I decided not to rush into choosing a bad property. I work for a foreign company and earn a good income, but I'm just an ordinary person. However, my late grandfather and father were wealthy. Our house is quite large. My father is very wealthy but didn't spoil us with luxury. I was taught the importance of money from a young age, getting scolded if I wasted anything. I've always thought that real wealthy people value their money and possessions. So, the house is large but quite old. The house was built by my grandfather, and I thought it couldn't be helped. Grandfather also valued things, so he wouldn't rebuild a mansion just because he had the money. I could relax in my spacious family home for the first time in a while. Even if it's a bit run down, home is still where I feel most at ease. I think being with my ex-husband, Patrick, would have just added to my stress. The day after I separated from Patrick, he showed up at my family home, bringing my sister, Lauren, with him. Lauren has been living alone since her college days, so perhaps these two are living together in the same apartment or somewhere. Well, I don't care about that. What bothered me more was why they came to our house. I was about to say something, but Patrick spoke first. We've decided to live in your family home. You're in the way, so get out. What? You're telling me to leave? Yeah, I want you to leave. Lauren and I are going to live in this house. Huh. That's right. This house is for Patrick and me to live in. Could someone ugly and stupid like you please leave? I see. Now you'll have nowhere to go. Sleep on the streets. That would suit you, Kimberly. Now, get out. Right now. Didn't you hear? From my parents. What? This house is going to be demolished soon. What? What are you talking about? So, considering the high repair costs and the house's age, my parents decided to demolish it and possibly sell the land. What? I didn't know that. If I had known, I wouldn't have moved out of the apartment. What are you doing to us? Huh? We've already moved out of our apartment. Now we're staying in a business hotel temporarily. I was taken aback. I was surprised to hear that Patrick and my sister had planned to live in our old family home and had already moved out of their apartment. I couldn't understand why they would want to live in such an old house. So, I decided to ask. Hey, why did you want to live in such an old house? And Patrick, you're not becoming a son-in-law, are you? We were planning to renovate this house. It's old but big, and I thought it would look pretty nice after renovations. I see. Is that so? That's why I even sold my car to raise funds. That's right, I even sold my car. Thinking we could live in a beautiful house after renovating it with Patrick. I thought how foolish they were. My parents hadn't given them permission to live here, yet they made plans to renovate and live here on their own. Selling their cars for this was absurd. This area is quite rural, so life without a car is difficult. They must be experiencing inconvenience. When I asked how they got here today, they said they took a taxi. I thought they had just wasted their taxi fare. Because they definitely can't live here. You're so stupid. Selling the car. How do you plan to commute, Patrick? Well, I'm taking the train every day now. I wake up early and travel from the nearest station to the hotel. Huh? I got fired from my job, so I'm planning to be a stay-at-home wife. What? What's that? I was accused of being aggressive and mean to a female colleague. Are you out of your mind? That's crazy. Shut up. It's none of your business. Maybe, but you don't seem to be reflecting on it. I always thought my sister had a twisted personality, apparently jealous of younger and prettier girls. The young new employee was very competent and popular with everyone, but my sister couldn't stand that. She had always thought she was the most beautiful, but then someone younger, prettier, and smarter came along. It's scary to think that my sister, at 35, is so blatantly jealous of someone in their early 20s. This must be what they call a delusional older woman. I'm 30 myself, but I've decided I must not end up like my sister. So, please leave. Goodbye. Hey. Wait. Wait a minute. When I closed the door on them, they kept making noise outside for a while but seemed to leave after some time. Patrick's parents are deceased, and he can't rely on his family home. I wondered what they would do now. Later, my parents demolished our family home when I moved out. They've decided to move abroad and live a relaxed life there. I only gave my new address to my parents. One day, I received a video call from Patrick. He sounded shaky. Hello, I need to ask you for a favor. What? I've been caught cheating, and it's a mess. Help me. What? I don't know what Lauren will do to me. I don't want to go back to the hotel. Where's your house? Let me stay with you. I thought to myself, what is he talking about? He's too stupid to understand, and I don't even want to try. After abandoning me to be with my sister and cheating on her, he's still not learned his lesson. He must be out of his mind. And it seems he's in a huge mess after being caught by my sister, getting yelled at a lot. Then, Patrick fled the hotel. He's scared of what my sister might do, so he wants me to shelter him. I felt pathetic for having married such a madman. So, I decided to give him a little punishment. Okay, I'll give you my address now. Come here, and I'll give you the taxi fare later. You're a lifesaver. Thank you. It's at 893 Way. Town. Got it. I'm on my way. And so, the foolish Patrick seemed to have headed straight there. But he must have regretted it upon arrival. Because the address I gave him was for a mafia office. Patrick, being foolish, rang the bell. You'd think he'd realize it's not where I live just by looking at the nameplate or something. Apparently, Patrick got a menacing glare from the guys who came out. You. How dare you trick me? Ah, you got me. Oops. Oops. No. I went through something terrifying. What are you going to do about it? Well, I thought a fool who calls his ex-wife asking for a place to stay deserved a little punishment. You should be grateful that was all that happened to you. This is the worst. What am I supposed to do now? Patrick was crying as he spoke. What am I supposed to do? I thought, feeling bothered. He should just deal with it himself. Apologize to my sister, or break up with her. My sister can be really scary when she's angry, and I bet Patrick can't return to the hotel now. So, I guess he's basically homeless. He mentioned selling his car, but it seems the money from that was quickly used up on hotel stays and food expenses. After all, both the car Patrick had and the one my sister had were older models of compact cars. So, even selling them wouldn't have brought in much money. This is what happens when you make unplanned plans to take over a house. Ridiculous, I thought. By the way, it seems like you're still staying at the hotel. Why don't you live in an apartment or a condo? That's because I ran out of money due to spending it all on my affair partner. What? I bought her bags and cosmetics after every date. Then my bank balance was practically gone. Huh? As if she thought of you as anything more than a money tree. You're insane. The reason Patrick and my sister couldn't afford an apartment was Patrick's fault. He had spent a lot of money on his affair partner, reducing his bank balance to a single digit. How foolish to spend that much. When married to me, Patrick had savings of about $50,000. Even after paying me compensation, there should have been plenty left. That he had almost used it all up meant he had spent a lot on his affair partner. Although they were involved in a relationship, it seems money was a significant motivation. But from the woman's perspective, Patrick was just a good source of expensive gifts. This affair partner turned out to be my sister's best friend. That's probably why my sister was incredibly angry. Talking to Patrick gave me a headache, so I ended the call. Afterward, I blocked and deleted him. I regretted not having done it sooner, but I was satisfied with the punishment I had delivered. Some time passed, and then my sister, Lauren, called me. It seems they had a discussion, and in the end, they decided to break up. Since they hadn't registered their marriage, it wasn't a divorce, just a breakup. My sister was crying, saying her dream of becoming a stay-at-home wife was shattered. She said she had nowhere to live and no money and asked me for help. Help me, I have nowhere to go. I can't even rely on our parents because I don't know where they are. I can't even afford a plane ticket. Yeah, I know. Our parents are angry about what you did. That's why they didn't give you their address. And plane tickets are super expensive, so you can't afford them right now, can you? Hey, then let's live together, just the two of us sisters. That would be fine, right? Sorry, but that's impossible. Why? Actually, I'm overseas right now. What? Yeah, I've become an expatriate. So, I'm living abroad now. That's ridiculous. Which country? Tell me. Even if I told you, you couldn't come because you don't have the money. What are you going to do with the information? You're going to send me the money. For the ticket and everything. What? There's no way I'm sending you money, what are you talking about? Lauren almost went crazy when she heard I had moved abroad. The truth is, my overseas assignment was decided a while ago, right after I separated from Patrick. I wasn't required to move immediately, so I stayed at my parents' home for a while and went to the office for handovers and to train the remaining juniors. After I left the US, my parents demolished our house and then moved abroad themselves. I live in a country not so different in time zone from the US, so I can make these line calls. I haven't told my sister which country I'm living in, nor where our parents are. So, we probably won't meet again. Even if I return to the US temporarily, I have no intention of telling her where I am. Our parents are dismayed by her actions, so they likely won't meet her either. It's cruel how everyone is ganging up to bully me. At this rate, I'll be homeless. I don't have any money left from selling the car, and I have to leave the hotel tomorrow. Well, if that's the case, it can't be helped. With the money you have left, why not buy a tent and sleep around somewhere? Why not try solo camping? It's trending. What? What are you saying? That's just being homeless. Are you mocking me? No, I didn't mean it like that. But what other choice do you have? Do you have somewhere else to stay? Well, Then, you should head to the home center now. Bye. After that, I blocked and deleted my sister's line. I no longer care if she truly becomes homeless. She can fend for herself and sleep wherever. I also heard about what happened to my ex-husband, Patrick. According to a mutual friend, he caused problems at work and was eventually fired. Now, with nowhere to live and no money, he's begging everyone for help. He's asking all of our friends for money indiscriminately. So, he's become disliked. What a pathetic guy. He's not suitable for marriage at all. I don't know if I'll remarry in the future. But if there is a next time, I'll definitely avoid men like him. It's crucial to be discerning in relationships. Someone might seem nice at first, but could change over time. In a way, it's been a learning experience. I plan to focus on my life and work hard overseas. Mandy was isolated in school, not getting along well with her classmates. Mr. Owen spoke of Mandy in such a manner. However, the truth seemed to be slightly different. Thinking that perhaps someone had come to see Mandy, I checked the home security cameras. Maybe there's a boy among those who came to visit. I continued to watch the footage from the security cameras stored in the cloud, with that single thought in mind. Finally, I found the person. I was astonished by the unexpected figure. No way. Is this Mandy's? I was shocked in front of my computer. People lie, but security camera footage never does. I was stunned by the unbelievable reality. But at the same time, anger began to well up inside me. I must not forgive this person. For Mandy's future, I cannot overlook this. The retribution for toying with Mandy, you wait and see, I thought. While swearing this in my heart, I copied the footage to my smartphone. My name is Kathy Smith. I am 35 years old and work as a nurse at a local hospital. As many know, nursing is a very tough job. But, it's because of this job that I believe I have my current happiness. In fact, I met Ted, who is a year older than me, at the hospital where I work. Ted, who works in construction, came to the hospital with an injury, and that was how we met. An angel in white. Seeing me, that's what Ted said. I found it amusing and started dating Ted. A year later, we got married, and our daughter Mandy was born. That was 11 years ago. I was very happy at that time, but now I am worried about Mandy. Actually, Mandy has been withdrawing from society and staying at home for about a year now. What can I do for her? My mind was always filled with Mandy. If I knew the reason why Mandy is withdrawing, perhaps some measures could be taken. But Mandy won't answer anything when asked. Moreover, we can't think of any reason. In short, all we can do is watch over Mandy. That's the current situation in our home. But until a year ago, Mandy was a very good child. Mandy is academically excellent and good at sports. Of course, I don't know the details of her school life. But from what Mandy said, it seemed she had many friends. Hearing only this, it feels like there shouldn't be a problem. In fact, Mr. Owen, her teacher at the time, had said this. Mandy is a very excellent student. She's good at both studies and sports, and she's a dependable friend. Mr. Owen said this during a home visit a year ago. All thanks to you. Oh, no. Not at all. She's inherently a brilliant student, no doubt there. Mr. Owen chuckled. Then, Ted, who was next to me, said grumpily. Of course. She's my daughter, after all. His guidance has nothing to do with it. Hey. What are you saying all of a sudden? You started it by saying it's thanks to the teacher. Ted grimaced. I sighed in exasperation. Needless to say, it was just a polite exchange between us. Mandy might have been a good child from the start, but her leadership at school was indispensable. Knowing this, I spoke carefully. However, it seemed Ted did not realize this. Indeed, Ted is impulsive. Still, I thought he had enough common sense to let it slide. Can you just be quiet for a bit? I'll talk to the teacher. But I know you're proud of Mandy, but you don't always have to speak your mind. I said it a bit strongly. Then, Ted turned away with a huff. It's like he's not a child. I was amazed. Nevertheless, I apologized to Mr. Owen. I'm sorry for my husband's behavior. No, it's just that you care about your daughter. Mr. Owen kept smiling wryly throughout. After Mr. Owen left, I explained the situation to Ted. Ted understood our exchange about 30 minutes after I started explaining. This turbulent home visit happened a little before Mandy started withdrawing. Then, one day, a while after that. That day, Mandy didn't get up for a long time. Ted went to work as usual. As the time for me to go to work approached, I called out to Mandy. Mandy? Are you still sleeping? It's time to go to school. Yeah. She sounded lethargic. Wondering about it, I continued. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? Yeah, a bit. I'm coming into your room, okay? After saying that, I entered Mandy's room. Mandy was curled up in bed. Wondering if she had caught a cold, I asked her while she was in bed. What's wrong? Did you catch a cold? I have a headache. Mandy replied without showing her face. Thinking she might have a cold, I touched Mandy's forehead. She didn't seem to have a fever, but Mandy, peeking out from under the covers, looked pale. It wouldn't be good to force her. Thinking this, I told Mandy. I'll call the school and tell them you're taking the day off. Okay. Got it. I'll ask Grandma to come over later. After having that conversation, I left Mandy's room. Then, I called the school. Planning to ask my mother-in-law to look after her in my absence, I contacted her. Could you come over during the day because Mandy is not feeling well? Okay, but I can't stay for a long time. My mother-in-law is a homemaker, but she has to take care of the house and my father-in-law. Even though it's for her granddaughter, it seems difficult for her to babysit for a long time. At that time, I thought Mandy was just temporarily unwell. So, as long as we could manage for now. That's why I asked my mother-in-law, within what was possible. True to her word, my mother-in-law came over for a few hours. She looked after Mandy, took care of her meals, and then went home in the evening. A few hours later, I came home. When I went to see Mandy, she was in bed. Were you okay? Mandy? Yeah. Grandma came over. I see. I hope you get better soon. After saying that, I left Mandy's room. However, Mandy didn't leave her bed the following day either. More accurately, she couldn't. Anyway, Mandy became unable to go to school. Mandy, did something happen at school? Not really. Mandy wouldn't tell me the reason, so I went to school and consulted with Mr. Owen. So, she can't seem to get up in the morning. Is that so? That's troubling. Mr. Owen frowned. It seemed Mr. Owen had no clue either. As I thought this, Mr. Owen sighed deeply and hesitantly began to speak. Actually, it seems Mandy has been isolated recently. Mr. Owen's story went like this. A little while back, during lunch break, he went to the classroom to prepare a quiz, intending to pick up textbooks. The students were making noise, enjoying their break, but Mandy was sitting alone. Thinking it was unusual, Mr. Owen approached Mandy. However, Mandy answered that nothing was wrong. But I was a little concerned, so I started paying more attention from that point. And it seems she was a bit isolated. He subtly asked the students, but the reason was unclear. However, it appeared Mandy was not getting along with her friends. Lately, their relationship seemed especially strained, to the point where Mandy hardly talked to any of them. Mr. Owen shared such observations. There wasn't much I could do. Is that so? I'm sorry for the trouble. No problem. I'm her teacher, that's my job. But please, keep this between us. Knowing this might stress Mandy, he wanted to keep it a secret. I agreed and didn't mention it to Mandy. Later, after Mandy went to bed, I cautiously opened up to Ted about it. What? What is the teacher doing? That's why, the teacher was being considerate. But, he's not doing anything, right? Isn't that neglect of duty? Ted got upset. I hurried to calm him down. That's not true. The teacher did ask around. But in the end, he did nothing, right? That might be true, but the teacher can't just interfere rashly, right? Interfering too much in the students' relations could complicate things further. After explaining this to Ted, he grudgingly accepted. All right. Let's just watch over Mandy for a while. That sounds good. I have a proposal. In watching over Mandy, I suggested installing security cameras. We live in a detached house, which usually means less concern about noise affecting the neighbors compared to an apartment. Usually, this is an advantage. But it becomes a disadvantage when considering Mandy is alone at home. My mother-in-law comes over during the day, but there are still hours when Mandy is alone. During those times, it's possible that no one would notice if something happened. That's true. It would be better to have security cameras. Ted quickly agreed. So, we decided to install the security cameras. However, having conspicuous security cameras might make the neighbors view us strangely. I thought that was okay, but Ted was adamantly against it. The reason was because of Ted's job in construction. Indeed, people who work in construction often give off an intimidating appearance. In fact, Ted looks scary. He's well-built and can appear dangerous. Moreover, installing security cameras would only reinforce that image. I don't mind how I'm seen, but I wouldn't want Mandy to be thought of as the child of such a person. Since Ted insisted, we reluctantly installed less conspicuous security cameras. Regardless, it's best if the security cameras are never needed. Therefore, Ted and I adjusted our work schedules to spend more time with Mandy. Of course, we asked the same of my mother-in-law, who readily agreed. It would have been best if I could quit my job. But our household barely gets by with both of us working, so I had to continue. Months passed, but Mandy showed no significant change. She still couldn't go to school and hardly ever left her room. However, she would talk to Ted and me. She also responded to calls from Mr. Owen. One day, before going to work, I tried speaking to Mandy. I'm going to work, but how are you today?" There was no reply from Mandy. Thinking something was off, I asked more forcefully, "Mandy? Are you okay?" Still no reply. I rushed into Mandy's room and found her struggling near the bed. "Mandy. What happened?" Mandy could barely utter a sound. Without hesitation, I called an ambulance. Mandy was quickly taken to the hospital where I work. There, an unexpected discovery was made. Mandy was pregnant. I almost collapsed when the doctor informed me. Soon, Ted arrived. I told him about Mandy's pregnancy. What? What do we do? Who's the father? Ted confronted me, but I had no way of knowing. When Mandy woke up, Ted tried to press her for answers. Thinking it was a bad idea, I sent Ted out of the room. Then, alone with Mandy, I asked her about the father. However, Mandy remained silent, refusing to name him. Keeping quiet won't solve anything. You can't possibly think about raising a child on your own. I will. I'll definitely give birth and raise this child. Give birth? That's just not possible. I stated the obvious, but Mandy sharply retorted. What, so you're saying I should get an abortion? Of course. You're still. Absolutely not. I won't get an abortion. I refuse. For some reason, Mandy was adamantly against abortion. I was at my wit's end. Mandy, listen. This isn't something you can decide on your own. Mandy turned away with a huff. At this point, the conversation was going nowhere. Meanwhile, Ted was fuming in the hallway. What should we do? I sighed. Mandy's pregnancy means she had relations with someone. However, Mandy hasn't been leaving the house recently. Yet, where and with whom did she get involved? How should we report this to the school? Various thoughts swirl through my mind. However, pondering gets us nowhere. I decided to tackle each issue one at a time. First is reporting to the school. I left Mandy in Ted's care and headed to the school. Unfortunately, Mr. Owen was away on business. So, I ended up speaking with the school nurse, Ms. Walters. I'm the school nurse. What brings you here today? Actually, I informed Ms. Walters about Mandy's pregnancy and inquired about school matters. Children's social circles often revolve around their classmates. Moreover, there are many cases where students confide in the school nurse about things they can't tell their homeroom teacher. With that thought, I asked, but she told me something unexpected. Indeed, Mandy has many friends. Recently, some of them have been visiting the nurse's office, worried about her. Is that true? They can message each other, but they've expressed a desire to meet in person. At that moment, something clicked inside me. I remembered what Mr. Owen had said. Mandy was isolated in school, not getting along well with her classmates. Mr. Owen spoke of Mandy in such a manner. However, the truth seemed to be slightly different. Thinking that, perhaps someone had come to see Mandy, I checked the home security cameras. Maybe there's a boy among those who came to visit. I continued to watch the footage from the security cameras stored in the cloud, with that single thought in mind. Finally, I found the person. I was astonished by the unexpected figure. No way. Is this Mandy's? I was shocked in front of my computer. People lie, but security camera footage never does. This means the footage I am watching is the truth. I was stunned by the unbelievable reality. But at the same time, anger began to well up inside me. I must not forgive this person. For Mandy's future, I cannot overlook this. The retribution for toying with Mandy, be prepared for it. While swearing this in my heart, I copied the footage to my smartphone. Then, after returning to Mandy, I asked Ted to leave us alone and spoke to Mandy privately. Mandy, just to confirm, this is the person involved, right? I showed the footage on my smartphone. Mandy's face turned red. Then, looking at me fiercely, Mandy tried to snatch the smartphone. Give it to me. No. This is the person, right? Mandy quietly nodded. I sighed deeply. The person caught on the security camera was Mr. Owen. However, Mr. Owen had also visited when I was present. A home visit for a student not attending school. That's how I had perceived it. In fact, Mr. Owen had only spoken with Ted and me. He had only talked to Mandy through the door of her room. Thus, Ted and I had felt safe letting Mr. Owen in. But, it turns out it wasn't just a simple home visit. It seemed he was building a relationship with Mandy. Moreover, he waited for a time when no one else was home to visit her. He didn't enter through the front door. Instead, he went around to the garden and entered through the window of Mandy's room. If he went from the entrance to the room, he would be caught on the indoor security cameras. Mr. Owen must have noticed the indoor security cameras when he visited the house. He must have devised such a scheme to avoid being caught on the security cameras. Regardless, we had been oblivious to this until now. The reason we hadn't noticed is simple. Mr. Owen's entry into Mandy's room through the window was never captured on the security cameras. We had informed Mandy about the installation of the security cameras. In fact, Mandy had used this knowledge to her advantage. Firstly, Mandy would hang clothes in front of the security camera installed on the wall of her room. She used this as a cover to invite Mr. Owen into her room. Of course, she would remove the clothes as soon as Mr. Owen left to avoid detection. If the same thing happened every day or several times a day, we would have scolded her for negating the purpose of the security camera. But what if it was just once in a while, for just an hour or two? Maybe she just wanted to dry some clothes. That's how we would rationalize it. Moreover, there wasn't just one security camera. If something happened, it should be captured by another camera. That was our false assumption. In the end, we had been cleverly deceived. However, their strategy was not perfect. If one looked closely at the footage, there were discrepancies. The footage I found was one such discrepancy. When the clothes swayed, Mr. Owen was briefly visible. He was talking to Mandy through the window, and then he entered the room. It was so brief that I had missed it when fast-forwarding through the footage. How long has this been going on with the teacher? Why? Well, Mandy shared everything. In her eyes, Mr. Owen was her boyfriend. It's unclear what Mr. Owen thought of it. Nevertheless, Mandy asserted they were dating. Their relationship began just before Mandy started withdrawing. But after being teased for talking to a teacher at school, Mandy became embarrassed about dating him and started to withdraw into her home. Worried, Mr. Owen started visiting her at home. Then, he began visiting her secretly. Mandy thought this would protect her from being teased. As a result, Mandy continued to withdraw and eventually developed a relationship with him at home. She also shared that Mr. Owen had confessed his feelings first, leading them to start dating. The indignation at an adult deceiving a child like this is indescribable. Nonetheless, I listened silently to Mandy's story. It wasn't right to blame her unilaterally. That was my thought. After listening to her for a while, I left the hospital room. In the hallway, I whispered to Ted what I had learned from Mandy. Ted almost raised his voice on impulse. Hold on. We're in a hospital. All right. But I won't forgive him. Ted clenched his fist. I deeply understood his feelings. The next day, I invited Mr. Owen to our home. The school nurse must have informed him about Mandy's pregnancy. That was my assumption, but Mr. Owen hadn't heard anything. In fact, when I called him, Mr. Owen responded, "Is there a problem?" So, I only informed him that Mandy was hospitalized. Additionally, I requested that he come to our house because I wanted to talk. When Mr. Owen arrived, Ted immediately raised his voice upon seeing him. "You. What have you done to our daughter?" "Excuse me? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about." I did my best to hold back Ted as he tried to lunge at him. After calming him down, I informed Mr. Owen about Mandy's pregnancy. At that moment, Mr. Owen turned pale. He immediately knelt down on the spot. "I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." Worried that the neighbors might overhear, I quickly covered Ted's mouth with my hand. "Be quiet for a bit. The neighbors will hear. But if this gets revealed, Mandy will be the one who suffers." I gave Ted a stern look. Finally, Ted bit his lip and remained silent. I decided to take over the conversation with Mr. Owen. First, I wanted to know what he thought about Mandy. It may sound crazy, but I was serious about her. "Serious? With a kid? Do you even realize your age?" "I understand, but..." He admitted there were things he had gone too far with. However, he was earnest in his relationship with Mandy and had even considered marriage. Mr. Owen shared such things, but they were hard to believe, and Ted felt the same. "Don't joke with me. I'm reporting you to the police, so be ready. Please, anything but that." "Shut up. There's no way I can forgive you." Ted raised his voice. Mr. Owen, startled, whispered back, "But, for Mandy's sake. If he truly cared for Mandy, not escalating the situation would be best." I understood that. But that was akin to overlooking a crime. I couldn't allow that. Yet, what was the right thing to do? I didn't know. Let's decide after hearing Mandy's side of the story. But her feelings are what matter most. You understand, right? Reluctantly, Ted nodded. The decision was thus postponed. I couldn't forgive Mr. Owen. But it wasn't as simple as just punishing him. What would Mandy think? That was my main concern. Regardless, I wanted to visit Mandy first. She was hospitalized, but I couldn't just leave her alone. For now, let's go see Mandy. After much thought, that was my conclusion. Mandy is at a sensitive and difficult age. Moreover, she is adamant about having the child. I hoped for the best solution. As I was preparing to go see Mandy, suddenly, my phone rang. It was the hospital's number, so I answered anxiously. "What?" "Mandy." I was quickly informed of Mandy's critical condition. Ted and I rushed to the hospital. Upon arrival, Mandy was in the treatment room. The doctor delivered a harsh reality. "I see." The doctor informed us that Mandy's baby had passed away. Later, when Mandy had calmed down, I discussed the child she had been pregnant with. Regarding Mandy's baby, "I know." Mandy began to cry. I pulled her into a tight embrace. Mandy cried loudly, as if recalling her infancy in my arms. Perhaps this indicates how genuine her feelings for Mr. Owen were. Maybe not now, but eventually. Such feelings welled up in me. But those were Mandy's one-sided emotions. I soon learned a harsh reality. After Mandy had stopped crying, Ted and I left the hospital room. Let's leave her be for a while, we decided. At that moment, My phone rang with a call from Ms. Walters, the school nurse. Do you have a moment? Yes. What is it? Ms. Walters shared his story. It had just happened. Arriving late to school for personal reasons. Ms. Walters coincidentally saw Mr. Owen making a phone call in a corner of the hallway. During the call, Mr. Owen said, "This is troublesome. The kid's pregnant. I was just having a bit of fun. This is the worst." Furthermore, Mr. Owen continued, revealing more. After being confronted by the father during the initial home visit, he became angry and decided to take advantage of the daughter. The situation escalated to this point because he lied about the child being isolated, thinking he had managed well, only to end up in this mess. He complained about facing complaints from the parents again. Hearing this, Ms. Walters was shocked. It was undoubtedly about Mandy. She instantly thought so and decided to casually approach Mr. Owen. Upon being suddenly addressed, Mr. Owen began to panic, repeatedly asking if his conversation had been overheard. I said I hadn't heard anything, but I'm certain it's about Mandy. Is that so? But if that's true, Mandy was merely played with, and Mr. Owen had lied to us as well. I ran out of patience. While looking at Ted, I thanked Ms. Walters. Thank you for your call. We will be heading your way shortly. After hanging up, I relayed Ms. Walters' story to Ted. Needless to say, Ted was furious. However, being in a hospital, we couldn't raise our voices. We decided to direct our anger at Mr. Owen later and first consult with a lawyer. We also contacted my mother-in-law to ask her to stay with Mandy in our place. Then, Ted and I left the hospital and headed straight to a law office. Through the lawyer, we contacted Mr. Owen's home. We had heard Mr. Owen was temporarily living with his parents due to commuting issues. Our intention was to bring his parents into the discussion about what to do next. However, Mr. Owen's parents weren't home. Instead, a young woman was there. She rushed over after receiving our message, introducing herself as Mr. Owen's fiancée. I'm Susan, his fiancée. I had a day off, so I'm here to clean his house. I see. And? May I help you? Well, the thing is, regardless of her being the fiancée, there was no holding back. Mr. Owen had done too much. Neither Ted nor I hesitated to spill everything to Mr. Owen's fiancée. As we talked, the fiancée's complexion visibly changed. What are you saying? That man. I can't forgive him. It's not the first or second time he's cheated. The fiancée banged the table. Then, she apologized to us. Regardless, I apologize for my fiancé's actions. Well, your apology isn't really what we need. Right. I'll make him apologize. Though, an apology hardly suffices. The fiancée clenched her teeth in frustration. Then, she stood up swiftly. Please, come with me. I will not forgive him this time. She gestured for us to follow. It seemed she was on our side. This was a fortunate turn of events, so we decided to follow her. Our destination was the school, where Mr. Owen was undoubtedly present. This was clear from the call with Ms. Walters. We headed straight for the staff room. It was break time, so Mr. Owen and a few other teachers were there. Mr. Owen quickly noticed us and approached, his gaze darting around. What are you doing here? We need to talk. Then, to the meeting room? As Mr. Owen tried to leave the staff room, the fiancé grabbed his arm. Why are you running away? I'm not running. And why are you here? I heard about the despicable thing you've done. The fiancée raised her voice. At that moment, Mr. Owen flinched but then began to play dumb with a smirk. What are you talking about? I haven't done anything. Don't lie. I heard you got a girl pregnant? As soon as Susan said this, the atmosphere in the staff room changed, and the other staff members started murmuring. What are you saying? That's not true. You know exactly what I mean. Stop making excuses and speak clearly. The fiancé's voice echoed loudly. Conceding, Mr. Owen began to kneel down. It's not like that. It was. And you even deceived her, saying you were serious, that you intended to marry her. Sweat appeared on Mr. Owen's forehead. I watched him closely. I was truly considering marriage. Mr. Owen tried to justify. But nobody was interested in his excuses. Even though you have a fiancé? Well, that's... His argument was completely incoherent. To deliver the final blow, I stepped forward. Mr. Owen, you intended to marry my daughter while engaged to someone else? No, I planned to break up with her. At that moment, the fiancée stomped her foot loudly. That's a brilliant idea. I want to break up too. Wait, just hear me out. I've had enough. I'll make you pay for what you've done. Hearing this, Mr. Owen's shoulders slumped in defeat. But I haven't forgiven him yet. I pressed on further. Moreover, I heard you confessed it was just a game with my daughter. No. Ms. Walters heard it. Reacting to my words, Mr. Owen looked back at Ms. Walters, who quietly nodded. At the same time, Mr. Owen seemed to crumble. Then, Ted delivered the final blow. We refuse a settlement. You're being reported to the police. Engaging with a minor is inexcusable, even with supposed consent. Yet, Mr. Owen, desperate, clung to Ted, begging for mercy. Please, anything but the police. Quiet. Criminals should keep silent. With that harsh rebuke, Mr. Owen was left speechless. After that, Ted called the police on the spot. However, immediate arrest was not guaranteed. Unless caught in the act, investigation precedes arrest. In fact, Mr. Owen was taken away for questioning at the police station, but was allowed to return home that day. But awaiting him at home was a storm. Naturally, after Mr. Owen's fiancée and we informed his parents of his actions. I heard from the fiancé later that it caused quite a stir. Furthermore, the engagement was called off, and she demanded compensation from Mr. Owen. Since the dowry had already been paid, it was likely she would be entitled to it. The next day, Mr. Owen was questioned by senior officials from the Education Board. The inquiry, held in a meeting room, saw Mr. Owen with a pale face, looking down. Returning to the staff room, he reportedly cried like a child, which is somewhat amusing. While Ms. Walters might have exaggerated, she shared this story with me later as what she witnessed. But I believe the gist of it is accurate, as I've seen Mr. Owen state afterward. That evening, he came to our house with someone from the Education Board to apologize, kneeling and crying in front of Ted and me. Of course, we didn't forgive him, and we still haven't, even after his arrest by the police. Mr. Owen is currently awaiting trial, having lost his job and become a recluse at home. After his arrest, Mandy was deeply saddened, likely realizing she had been deceived for the first time. However, Mandy never spoke of it. We didn't either, as it wouldn't heal her wounded heart. All we can do is stay by Mandy's side. Ted and I discussed this. There might be more we could do, but until Mandy can come to terms with it herself, it's best to quietly support her. I'm convinced Mandy won't be defeated by this. Lately, she has started to regain her smile. Indeed, Mandy is our pride and joy. I strongly feel this now.
I've decided to marry my mistress. I was in a traffic accident and had been hospitalized for 2 weeks. Just when I thought my husband finally came to visit, he suddenly showed up with his mistress and stated he will marry her. So, we're getting a divorce. Sign the divorce papers now. My husband, encouraged by his mistress, shoved the divorce papers at me with a smug look on his face. The children came to see me as soon as they heard about the accident. But my husband's actions were unbelievable. He had been neglecting the children and was absent from home because he was spending time with his mistress. I was sick of my husband's irresponsible behavior. When I looked at the divorce papers, all the sections that my husband needed to fill out were already completed. All that was left was for me to write my name and the divorce would be finalized. Then, my son, who was sitting on a chair, stood up. "Dad, you can't divorce Mom. Because the woman over there is." "Huh? What nonsense are you talking about?" My husband raised his voice in disbelief. My son, with a determined look, crossed his arms and continued speaking. "My name is Tracy Morgan. I am 38 years old, and I work in the accounting department at my husband David's company. With my accounting degree, I met David when I was a junior in college and started working part-time at the company where he worked. At that time, David was in his first year and taught me the job as my trainer. Thanks to David's kind guidance, I was able to fit in at the company. And I dated David secretly behind the other employees. However, I got pregnant after dating David for a year. We decided to get married, but both my parents and my in-laws were against it. When I strongly told my parents that I did not want to have an abortion, both they and my in-laws eventually gave in and we were able to marry. After that, I gave birth to 2 children. The first was a reliable girl, Nicole. The second was an energetic boy, Alex. After Nicole was born, both my parents and David helped with taking care of Nicole. Thanks to that, I was able to obtain the accounting degree which I aimed for. And I could continue working at the same company where I was working part-time. However, David suddenly changed after Alex was born. "David, can you change Alex's diaper?" "Ugh, that's annoying. You can do it yourself, can't you?" David became completely uncooperative with taking care of our kids. Even after my maternity leave ended, David's attitude remained unchanged. On the contrary, he started treating me like a servant, busy with kids. However, when my father-in-law was around, my husband behaved maturely. So when my father-in-law came to our house, I could relax a little. When Alex was born, my mother-in-law adored him immensely. She probably thought he would be the heir to take over the company, being a boy. While I was studying at university, I left Nicole's care to my parents. But I decided to participate more in kids' care since Alex was born after I graduated from college. When I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth to Alex, my mother-in-law came to our house. "He's your child, but since he's my son's precious heir, I'll raise him." "But Alex is my child. You got pregnant while you were a student, which makes me feel uneasy. I'll take care of his discipline properly, so leave it to me." My mother-in-law took Alex from my arm and drove off in her car. That night, when David returned home, I told him about the incident with my mother-in-law. "Why don't you leave it to my mom? She's more experienced, and she'll surely raise him well." "But I'm his mother. I don't think Mom will listen to that. If you resist any more, you never know what Mom might say." I was so shocked that my body stiffened. Seeing that, David smirked. When my mother-in-law found out that I told David about our interaction, she went into a rage. "You are trying to isolate me by tattling to David," she exclaimed furiously. wreaking havoc around the house. This is what I hate the most, so when things didn't go his way, David used this example, saying he will speak to his mom to silence me. Since then, I have been worried about Alex and have been visiting my in-laws' house. It seemed that my mother-in-law was fond of Alex, his room was filled with lots of toys. And Nicole was treated as negligibly as I was. When David asked me to take Nicole and go to my mother-in-law's house, my mother-in-law blatantly made a disgusted face. Come inside. No, I don't need to. I just brought something David asked for, so I'll be leaving now. Come inside. It's an order. Obey. I was reluctantly pulled by the arm by my mother-in-law and entered their house. Once inside my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law started ordering me and Nicole around. Make coffee. It's only natural for a daughter-in-law to do at least this much. Nicole, help your mother quickly. Nicole stopped touching her smartphone and glared at my mother-in-law. What's with that face? She slapped Nicole on the head. Ouch. That isn't abuse. Nicole. Calm down. That was all I could do to soothe Nicole. Nicole came into the kitchen and muttered complaints about my mother-in-law. Both Nicole and Alex knew about the terrible treatment I received from my mother-in-law and David. Nicole understood my situation well because she received the same treatment. And Alex, who is very perceptive, also knew. Ah. Mom and Nicole are here too. Alex, long time no see. Grandma, you were bossing Mom around again, weren't you? I could hear it clearly in the hallway. Alex, that's not true. Your eyes are darting around, sounds like a lie to me. Then Alex came into the kitchen and helped me with serving coffee. Alex, thank you as always. This is easy. Alex always rushed over to silence my mother-in-law whenever I visited my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law had to remain silent in front of Alex, her potential heir, as she couldn't show her bad side. It's always something only Alex can do, I think to myself. And Nicole and Alex get along well. They both seem to be into the same cartoon lately, and that's all they talk about. Nicole, who is good at drawing and aspires to be a comic artist, is close enough to Alex to gift him illustrations of characters. And their sibling relationship is really good. Welcome home. Oh, Tracy and Nicole are here today too. Make yourselves comfortable. Thank you, Father. My father-in-law is kind to us and often gives Nicole sweets. Although Nicole dislikes her grandmother, she is quite fond of her grandfather. It seems my parents have heard about my relationship with my in-laws from Nicole. And they have told me that I can come back home anytime. My parents have been saying this for about 5 years now. That comment was what made me consider divorcing David. But my mother-in-law will desperately try to take custody of Alex. And Alex's custody would likely go to David. Custody should prioritize Alex's will, but there is also a possibility that it could go to David. So I am hesitant about divorcing. Since then, Nicole has become a high school student, and I have been living busy days. Then, a call came from David. In the middle of a weekday, could it have been an accident? Hello, what's up? Why are you calling at this time? Dad passed away. Your father? He seemed well when we met last time. It seems his chronic illness suddenly worsened. Anyway, Mom is worried, so could you hurry to the family home? Of course. At this time, even David seemed to be panicking, his tone more frantic than usual. I immediately headed to my in-laws' house to pick up my mother-in-law. She seemed to be in quite a shock as well, hardly having any energy to boss me around as usual. I assisted with the preparations for my father-in-law's funeral and had hectic days. I had no time to be considerate of Nicole and Alex, but they actively helped me. Tracy, I found the will. Let's see, the next president of the company is David. I'm so happy. Being the mother of the president is something to be proud of. With a condescending look, my mother-in-law said this. Having no time to deal with my mother-in-law, I hurriedly continued preparing for my father-in-law's funeral. After the funeral was over, calm days returned once again. Since becoming a company executive, David has started not coming home. You're not coming home this weekend either? It can't be helped. A president is busy with business trips and such. But I heard that your father hardly ever went on business trips when he was president. I have to greet our business partners since there's a new president now. Such greetings are common sense, necessity. Although there were oddities in David's words, I didn't have the energy to press further. So I kept silent. And the amount of affection my mother-in-law poured into Alex only increased. Alex used to visit my house on weekends, but that stopped. According to Alex, my mother-in-law made the curfew stricter and prohibited him from visiting my house. For Alex, who had just become a middle school student and whose social circle was expanding, this was very tough, and he seemed to be defiant towards my mother-in-law. However, my mother-in-law took Alex's defiance as a twisted form of love and bound him even more tightly to her rules. Alex seemed troubled by his relationship with my mother-in-law and called Nicole every month. 2 years after my father-in-law's funeral, Alex became a senior in middle school, and Nicole was in her 2nd year of high school. One day, I received a call from my parents and brother, saying they were moving. My parents and brother would live in an apartment near my house, so that we could help each other in case something happened. That day, David returned home for the first time in 4 days, and I told him about this news. Huh? That useless unemployed is going to live near our house? There's a new apartment building across the street, right? They're going to live on the 5th floor there. An apartment. I've heard rents are quite high in this area. Why would your unemployed brother live there? He must be living off parents, right? It seems better for him to become independent and live on his own. While drinking beer, David kept disparaging my brother. Even though my brother wasn't there, I thought the insults were too harsh. The alcohol probably made his words even harsher. Thanks to this, I understood how David really felt about my brother. If he looked down not only on me but also on my family, then there was no point in continuing to love him. Finally, I decided to divorce. However, if it comes to a divorce, I must ensure that I can take custody of Alex. Something like substantial evidence that could silence my mother-in-law. As I was thinking of a way, my brother's face came to mind. I immediately called him. Hello, brother? I need a little help. Are you free right now? I'm free now. What's up? Is it about your divorce with David? My brother quickly understood what I wanted to say. When I explained the plan, he immediately agreed to help. An opportunity to vent my long-held frustrations had arrived, and I was excited. 2 weeks later, while I was cycling home, something happened. As I was crossing a pedestrian crosswalk where few people were passing, I heard the sound of a car's brakes. After that, I lost consciousness. The next memory I have is being in the hospital. Ms. Morgan, have you woken up? That's great, you've regained consciousness. Sorry, why am I in the hospital? Actually, you were involved in a traffic accident. We received a call from a witness and an ambulance brought you here. A traffic accident. Could it be the small crosswalk in the residential area on 2nd Street? Yes, it's rare to have an accident there. Who was involved in the accident? They haven't found the person yet. According to a witness, it was a hit and run, and the police are currently investigating. Then, the door to the hospital room creaked open. Mom. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm glad. But your face is covered in gauze. I've never seen you with so many injuries before. Thank you, Alex and Nicole, for coming all the way here. You must be on your way home from school, right? Don't worry about me, go home and study. Alex was looking around curiously. Nicole said, "He looks like a cat that just came home for the first time," and chuckled. Despite looking a bit displeased, Alex asked me something. "Where's Dad? Hasn't he come yet?" "Your father hasn't come yet, but I'm okay, really." After talking with me for a while, Alex and Nicole went home. The X-ray showed a broken leg, but I was told I could recover without major complications with rehabilitation. So I began my treatment. Nicole and Alex, who seemed to have arranged to meet after school, visited me every day. Sometimes they brought chocolate snacks, which I loved, helping me get through the tough treatment. 2 weeks after being hospitalized. While Nicole and Alex were making the hospital room lively, quiet footsteps approached. The door rattled open, and there was David. "Oh, Tracy, this looks pretty bad. Fractures are just pathetic." David. At that moment, I was speechless. Next to David stood a woman with a prominent belly. The woman, who seemed to be pregnant, was stroking her stomach. "Who is the woman next to you?" "Let me introduce her, this is Mandy, my girlfriend." "Nice to meet you, I'm Mandy. I've been with David for a long time." The woman who appeared to be his mistress smirked condescendingly at me. "Why bring her here? What's going on?" "I've decided to marry Mandy." "So, Tracy, it's divorce for us. Sign the divorce papers now." "Wow, David, you're the best." Encouraged by his mistress, David presented the divorce papers to me with a triumphant look. The section of the divorce papers David needed to fill out was already complete. All that was left was for me to sign my name to finalize the divorce. Then, Alex, who had been sitting, stood up. "Dad, you can't divorce Mom. Because Mandy here is already married." "Huh? What did you say?" David exclaimed in a ridiculous voice. The mistress awkwardly turned her eyes away from David. "Plus, this woman is a marriage scammer. So, Dad, marrying her won't work, and I think she'll end up conning you out of your money. You knew, didn't you?" The mistress fled the hospital room as if escaping. After a while, we could hear her shouting from outside the room. I had arranged with Alex to have the police wait near the hospital, so that we could smoothly hand over the mistress to the police after the whole ordeal. David collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Having boasted so much before, his current state looked pitiful. "How did you guys know about this?" "Actually, I hired a detective agency to investigate you, David. That's how I found out you had a mistress and that Mandy here is a marriage scammer. To think they could find out all this, the detective agency is really something. What a mess." Actually, the call to my brother was to find a detective agency. He's an investor and owns stocks in various companies. I thought he would know a reliable detective agency to recommend. So, it's divorce, right? I'll sign the divorce papers now, so check them when I'm done. Wait. Please don't go through with the divorce. You were the one who mentioned divorce first, weren't you? Ignoring what David said, I signed the divorce papers. Also, the detective agency called earlier. And it seems that Mandy might have been the one who hit you with the car. They said she was trying to kill you and collect the insurance money. She's really a gold digger, only sees money. Stupid, really. David's face suddenly turned red, perhaps irritated by Nicole's statement. Mandy did. I didn't know anything about that. Then, the door rattled open, and the police appeared. Excuse me, but could you tell us more about this matter? The police. I don't know anything, it's useless to ask me. We'll discuss this at the station. Could you come with us? Let go. I'm not involved. David's resistance was futile, and he was taken to the police station. Later, I heard from the police the entire story. As the detective agency had found out, the mistress had indeed tried to run me over, making it look like an accident. The mistress was arrested for marriage fraud and my accident. David was reportedly pale when he heard this from the police. It seemed he realized he had gotten involved with a really dangerous woman. After I was discharged, I told David that I would be submitting the divorce papers. He didn't resist, and thanks to his agreement, I was able to smoothly file for divorce and gain custody. Though he agreed to pay alimony and child support in a lump sum, David never paid. I tried contacting him, but he just read my messages and ignored them. I wondered what I should do next. After filing the divorce papers, I took Alex and Nicole and went back to my parents' house. When I explained the situation, they said I could stay until I found a new job and was able to support the three of us. Our family home is close to my house, so Nicole and Alex were able to continue going to their schools without needing to transfer. For a while, I was busy looking for a new job. But life was significantly easier without David and my mother-in-law around. About 2 weeks after returning home, the doorbell rang. My mother said, "Maybe it's a delivery," and went to check the intercom. "Tracy." It's David and his mother. I wonder what happened. "Mom, I'll go." "It's okay." "Mom, are you sure? Should I come too?" Alex, who was studying in the living room for his high school entrance exams, looked worried. Next to him, Nicole, who was drawing an illustration, also looked over curiously. "It's fine, this will be quick." I quickly went to the front door. "You're slow, what were you dawdling for?" "Sorry. Tracy, it's been a while. I never thought you'd be at your parents' house." "It's been a while, David. You've become quite slovenly, haven't you?" David's clothes were wrinkled, and his hair was tousled as if he had just gotten out of bed. Since I always did the housework, he probably didn't know how to wash or iron his clothes. "What brings you to my parents' house all of a sudden?" "Give back Alex. He is the important heir to our company." "Mother-in-law. Please don't shout all of a sudden. Alex is the heir. He's a necessary child to me. I am already divorced from David, and I have custody. So, mother-in-law, you have no right to live with Alex. You woman. You did all this just to separate me from Alex. That's the lowest." My mother-in-law tried to attack me. David tried to stop her by force, but despite being in her 70s, she thrashed about wildly in David's arms. "Tracy, what's all this noise about?" I could hear everything from my room. "Brother."
Ah.
If it isn't Tracy's ex-husband and mother-in-law. "Hello? Oh, why are you here? What does this mean?" My mother-in-law, looking surprised, quickly began greeting my brother in a subservient manner. David appeared confused, not understanding why his mother was acting so differently towards my brother. "David, you greet too." "Why should I? This man is a major shareholder in our company." "What? I never heard about that." David, flustered, began greeting like his mother. The realization that the person they had been ridiculing was a major shareholder must have been quite a shock. "By the way, Mr. President, I heard from my sister that you've been funneling company funds to your mistress." "What's that about?" "Company money." "I don't know anything about that. I haven't done anything like embezzlement. I have evidence." "Shall I show it to you now?" My brother showed David the documents he was holding. The documents included details of money being withdrawn. from the company account and handed to his mistress. Wasn't the president's mistress a marriage fraudster? Using company money on a fraudster must be bad if it gets out, right? Well, it's already out. Hey, did you spread rumors around the neighborhood? I don't do such underhanded things. However, your scandal has been turned into a comic and is circulating online. Saying this, my brother showed David the comic posted on social media. And David's face turned even paler. The comic's artist was Nicole, who had been turning my story into comics and sharing them on social media since returning home. It was quite a hit and had even been picked up by online news outlets. Although the characters' appearances were slightly camouflage, Nicole's drawings were so good that people close to us speculated that the model for the husband was David. As a result, David's company's reputation had suffered. This matter will be discussed at the board meeting next week. So, David, you better prepare to be fired. This can't be happening. Also, make sure to transfer the alimony and child support by next week, okay? Understood. Then, about the board's recommendations, can we withdraw them? As if that proposal would ever be accepted. David retreated behind his mother with a tearful look. My mother-in-law then stepped forward, puffing out her chest and glaring at me. What about Alex? He's coming back to live with us, right? Can you be quiet? I can't concentrate on my studies. Alex opened a window and peered out. Seeing him, my mother-in-law's face brightened, and she bounced up and down like a rabbit. I have more fun living with Mom, and I have no intention of going back. Besides, we're strangers since the divorce, right? If you keep making noise, I'll call the police. The mention of the police struck a nerve with David, who quickly rushed his mother into the car. Although my mother-in-law was still making a scene, David managed to get her into the car quickly, avoiding further trouble. After that, David and my former mother-in-law never appeared in front of us again. The following week, David's dismissal was confirmed at the board meeting. As expected, David stepped down as a director and left the company. Afterwards, I left David's company and started working at a company introduced by my brother. Thanks to the qualifications I had from college and my past experience, I am earning a better salary than at my previous company. As for the compensation and child support, David transferred the money to my account promptly. He also had to take out a loan to repay the money he embezzled from the company. David was searching for a new job, but due to the influence of Nicole's comic, he was rejected at every company he applied to after the document screening. David ended up having to do physical labor, working desperately. The shock of losing Alex caused his mother to develop dementia, and her condition is worsening. Since David is the only one available, he is having a tough time juggling work and caring for his mother. Meanwhile, Alex passed the entrance exam for his first-choice high school and is enjoying his high school life. As his life with his grandmother was quite restrictive, I'm allowing him as much freedom as possible to hang out with friends. He joined the basketball club and is balancing his studies with sports. Also, Nicole's social media comic essay is set to be published as a book. Nicole has become a well-known emerging manga artist thanks to social media, and is currently a celebrity. Becoming a manga artist has been a big step towards fulfilling her dream, and she was truly happy when she heard about the book deal. Despite my initial concerns about David and his mother's blatant sexism possibly hindering Nicole and Alex's development, it seems my worries were unfounded. Both of them are achieving their dreams and growing into respectable adults, and I am fully supporting them while working.